So welcome. This is the August 19th virtual event for the PCR NMRA Coast Division. Today we really just have one topic I wanted to talk a little bit about before we kind of get into more modeling, and that is we will be at the South Bay Railroad Historical Society on September 24th. That's the Santa Clara Depot. This is the same location we did last year. We have morning clinics, we have a lunch, and we have afternoon layout tours. The clinics that are on tap, we've got 3 clinics, and we actually made a decision to ask David to extend his clinic. David did a clinic on soldering last year, and it was incredibly well received by the people that were there. So what we've asked David to do is actually extend that to a couple of hours. And we'll have to figure out exactly how to do it. It's fairly limited attendance. It's probably going to be about 7 or 8. We'll talk to David about how many things can be in and actually participate and make it work. That'll be back in the boardroom. And it'll be, I think, a great opportunity to learn about soldering. Between us guys, I'd love to go do that, but I've convinced David he's going to help me personally because I'm a terrible solderer. Then we have a new clinic by Earl. Earl has, we talked a bit, and Earl is going to do a clinic on getting the static out. And this is not static cling. When I first saw that, I thought it was going to be a dryer sheet discussion. But really, this is around, how do you use this new technology, whether it's LED lighting, animation, and other things to add value, add new capabilities and value to your modeling. I think it's going to be pretty exciting. You all have seen Earl's modeling. This is really the other side of how he's taken advantage of technology to do some great things with those models. And then I'm going to do the clinic that I did at the PCR convention. I'm actually doing this at the NMRA convention next week, which is about building buildings 2 ways, one in acrylic structure and then 3D framing. So those will be our clinics. The 2 clinics, Earl and my clinic, will be done in the large room. The David's clinic will be back in the boardroom behind the layout. So talked a lot about lunch, and we're going to try something and take advantage of something. If you look on the map, what you realize is that the depot is on one side of the Santa Clara yard area, and right on the other side of the yard, literally you can see it from the depot, is a Costco. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a count of everybody who's there, kind of do some hand raising, make sure people are interested. We'll do that probably by about 11 o'clock. We'll go ahead and call Costco, and we're going to order some pizzas from Costco. We're going to get just water. Well, I'm going to go buy a couple of cases of Costco waters and throw them in an ice chest. So we'll have water and pizza. If you want other drinks, the problem with trying to bring drinks is you've got to buy 7 or 8 different varieties to appeal to everyone. So we're just going to do BYO drinks. Hopefully we'll be able to just throw if you've got a soda and you want to throw it in a cooler, we'll have a couple of coolers with ice there. So that'll be lunch. That'll be at noon. That way we'll all be there in a location for lunch. And then we're planning to have 4 or 5 layouts open in the afternoon. Right now, Seth Newman, Ted Stevens, and the Cal Central Club are open. We're going to keep them pretty much in the Mountain View Peninsula area, not distribute them. Quite frankly, last year we had too many layouts open, and a couple of them either didn't have or only had 1 visitor. So we're going to shoot on kind of doing the area to the west of Santa Clara this year. And then we'll go ahead and have some of the other try to have some of the other layouts open the next time we have an event, probably, maybe not next year, but depending on next year when we have one. So I had one question before we kind of close. Any questions about content, comments?
I think this is probably a fabulous agenda, and I'm really interested. I think the choice of clinics is great. I love the idea about the lunch and limiting the layout tours. So I think this is it reads like a fabulous event, and I'm looking forward to it.
Cool. So hopefully this will be a fun event and everybody can come down to it. The one question I have is, should we try to do this online? Now, we tried last year, quite frankly. 2 things happened. I screwed up, and I was unmuted in the virtual call, and we also had not a great microphone. We can resolve both of those issues this year. The PCR bought lavalier mics for the event that was for the convention. So we can get those lavalier mics. So we'll get good sound from the speakers. And we'll not make a mistake this year. We'll have somebody monitoring and being more effective on the Zoom channel if we do a Zoom channel. So I guess the question I'm asking is, from the folks that are here, this is kind of a set of virtual attendees. Does it make sense to try to do this as and this would be the main room clinics is really all we can do, but to take the 2 main room clinics and put them out on a Sunday video? One vote from David. Other comments? Jesse? So, Jim, you got a comment? Or are you saying yes?
Yes, but I do have a comment.
Go.
Where do we park when we go to the depot?
There's parking right in front. There's a parking lot right across from it, and you can park over there.
Is it paid parking?
I think it's free on Sunday. I don't remember paying last time I was there.
Okay.
By the way, in terms of your recruitment goals, I assume, not a good assumption, that anybody who signed their name to a piece of paper in the last couple of times, you would reach out to them and let them know there's a virtual meet that they can attend, just as our guest.
You mean in terms of has signed up?
Hello, I'm interested in the NMRA, or no, I'm not going to give you any money, etc. But we have a list someplace, or somebody indicated interest, and I think you should reach out to those folks and just let them know this is happening, and it's going to be virtual. You don't have to leave the backyard barbecue to drag your ass all the way to San Jose. And this is one of the things that we do.
Yeah, I actually don't have anything like that. I mean, I don't get anything there's nothing we get from National about someone who expressed interest. And because we really haven't done any recruiting for the last, as far as I can tell, as long as I've been involved, we don't have really a prospect list or anything like that. I think the idea, Jesse, you just suggested is really an interesting idea, that if we do, and based on this, by the way, I'm going to send an email to John and ask him, John Abdicola, and ask him if he'd be willing to help us do this time, do it again this time. I think putting that up in some of the other forums, like some of the other groups.io, putting it on some Facebook pages, sending something to the clubs around saying, hey, this event is happening. You can join it virtually and see the clinics and get an idea of kind of what we do. I think that's a great idea. And actually what's really exciting, by the way, I put this in the note. I talked to Jim Haig, and Jim Haig has agreed to be our registrar. And I talked to, and Sydney Abdicola has agreed to be our membership chair. So one of the things I'm going to do is talk to Sydney about taking on about that. That's a good idea to, how do we promote the virtual side of an event across a number of venues to see if we get people. The other side is, if we do a virtual event and we do it well, we can put it up on our YouTube channel, and it'll be there as well to point people to say, here were some clinics that were at a recent event that you could have gone to. The last question, and I didn't put this down as a question, but I think it's interesting. Earl will definitely want to hear the answer to this as well. We've tried to do kind of a contest area, and we haven't had a great response to that. Is there an interest in having like a what I've built area to bring in things you built, but not make it into a contest? Or, what we can do is you can have models out, you can bring a model in, display it, people can look at it and talk about it. And if you want it to be judged for merit awards, you can ask to do that, but not to actually do any formal contest, not either a formal judged contest or even an informal audience choice contest. Just kind of eschew the whole contest concept. Is that make sense to folks, or what kind of makes sense in that arena? Any?
Bill, I'm very much in favor of that latter thing, where you can bring a model, we have the table, but you individually can ask to be judged.
Okay, cool. Now, the other question is, do we want to have time on the agenda for people to talk about their models? So, and by the way, let me kind of say, so I went to a Red meet back about a month and a half ago, and what the Red's done is they did the thing of, they said bring in a model, and then what they did was took time, and everybody who had a model had an opportunity to get up and talk about why they brought that model. Then and again, very much up to you guys. What the Red group did was they did a vote of who had the best model story. It was not really a vote on the model, it was a vote on the model story. You know, like, this is a model I built with my dad when I was 7 years old, and I know it doesn't look very great, but it has great memories for me because of this, this, and this. And then whoever was the popular choice of the favorite story got a $50 award. I'm not actually suggesting we do that unless you guys get really excited about the concept. But you know, the idea, I guess there's kind of two questions there. Do we want to build into the agenda some time, you know, like at noon or right after the clinics, maybe, where before we have lunch, we have 15-20 minutes, and anyone who brings a model has an opportunity to get up and talk about it and why they brought it and what they did, and make it a little bit of interaction? Or do we just want to leave it that models get put out and people put their name on them and leave it at that level? David, go.
I would suggest that you bring the model and you bring a 8.5 by 11 with the model story on it. For those that don't care to get up and talk, people can look at the model and see the write-up that's with the model as a model story, so that you have an option of just saying, this is my model I
Exactly.
built with my dad, blah, blah, blah.
Okay.
And those that are more outgoing can stand up and wave their arms. But I think any sort of sharing of knowledge and experience is valid and worthwhile.
Excellent.
Hey, Phil, we could just
Yeah.
do show and tell between the two clinics.
Right. Well, the one I thought about that, the one downside is that the folks who are in David's clinic won't be there.
Okay.
But we'll have a quick conversation about agenda, Earl, you and I and David, and post some posts together. I just kind of wanted to get some feedback, because I mean, between us, Earl and I were incredibly discouraged the last couple of times we had a contest, you know, tried to have a contest table and no one showed up. It was kind of unfortunate. So anyway, well,
Bill, I know I try to bring a 2-page write-up on any model that I would show. It just is a lot to talk about, the history, how I built it, and everything
Right.
else.
No, I understand. Cool. Well, those were the questions. I think it'll be a fun event. My hope is, my goal is to kind of try to get us to have 2 events at least a year. This one here and maybe one somewhere in the north. You know, my target in the north between us is the Golden State guys, because they have a room we can use there. So we have, you know, maybe a fall event in the south, a spring event in the north. Next year we won't have a spring event because we've got the convention coming. So that's, quite frankly, enough effort for most of us. And then we'll have auctions in the summer in the heat, and in the winter in the cold, because those are pretty much indoor events that can be done in Alameda, where we are in inclement weather. So the idea is to try to get our other events where you're doing layout tours to be in the times of the year when the weather's more amenable to being outdoors and doing things.
I just going to make one sort of announcement. The 24th is 3 days after I'm getting my new hearing aids that are supposed to have features that really work in large environments. So I'm really looking forward to this on a personal level to test them out.
Excellent. Well, with that, I'm not going to put another slide up. I'm just going to throw it open to anyone bringing up any topics they'd like to bring up and talk about. Any exciting modeling?
I have some show and tell and the end of a project, hopefully successful end of a project to share with you guys.
Cool. Go for it.
Could you spotlight my iPad mini?
I will.
For the previous 2 years, Good, my wife, has a certain predilection for Christmas. And so the last 2 years, I tried running HO under the tree. And the dust bunnies seemed to come from all over the house and congregate on the rails under the tree. And it was just a pain in the keister. And so having gotten involved for good or for ill with the O-scalers in Pleasanton, I thought, why don't I try O-scale under the tree? Garden railway stuff is too big because of the peculiarities of the living room. So here were the first pieces of equipment that I bought to try to get a train under the tree. And it's turned out to be a educational and expensive project, because I didn't realize that O-scale equipment is, the scale's twice as big, the volume is how many times bigger, the weight is how many times bigger, and the expense is, Jesus, oh my Lord God, impressive cost to make stuff run well in O-scale, or at least that's been my experience. This Plymouth switcher, for example, was bought as a Hulk off of eBay. In fact, everything you're going to see is eBay. The track actually came from O-scale West, where I bought a handful of it, and it turned out that it's old Milwaukee, I don't know, some old something brand, and the track was incredibly hard to deal with as flex track, very stiff, and I had to do a lot of cursing, but it's down. But here you see this Plymouth. I have 5 Hulks that I purchased to get enough parts to make a Plymouth work and have a few spare parts. The gears on the axles split. They're plastic half gears where you slide the 2 axles into it, and they were all split. So I kept buying garbage dead Hulks off of eBay, and finally got enough parts to get this one here working, to get enough parts for railings and this, that, and the other. Weathered, colored, put in windows. You can just see the wires in the window just above the Union Pacific logo, where there is an HO scale decoder, which is handling this thing, and Katie couplers and so on. So this locomotive, if I count all the things I bought for it, is running me approaching, I think, $200 for this O-scale 2-rail locomotive. The caboose, yes.
It's surprising, but G-scale is actually cheaper.
I can believe it. The caboose actually is, I've got this first because I'm running a 24-inch radius, which is very tight for O-scale 2-rail. The caboose I got, again, eBay, which has been repaired and reworked, and couplers for this thing, but this only had 2 axles under it as it came to me. It was an Atlas, as is the locomotive, and I ran it as a test over at Pleasanton O-scale layout. It promptly derailed because with just 2 axles and a rigid mount, it couldn't follow slight track irregularities. So you're looking here at $32 for a pair of trucks from Atlas under this caboose. Oh, by the way, the caboose is weighted to NMRA standards. So this was the
It's getting to the level where it would have been cheaper to buy a bigger living room.
Yeah. Okay, so I just told my Sprague via JMRI to power up the Plymouth. Let me move it out of the way of the camera here. And the next set of purchases was a range of O-scale equipment to meet my wife's specifications, which is the Christmas theme. And so I've done something that may horrify some of you gentlemen. Okay, let's get the next locomotive up here, which is UP 1875. I'm in JMRI at the moment. There. Again, eBay And here comes, yeah. But
Hey, train of lights.
it is delighting my wife. Okay, the 1875 came with a QSI sound system in it. And after a lot of cursing and everything else, because the CVs for it were just wacky, but I sort of beat it in the submission, took it over to Pleasanton and ran it to stretch its legs and put some miles on it, and the sound part of it blew up. So I ripped it out, threw it away, and inside this is a NCE D408 decoder. So I don't have any sound, but that's fine. It's reliable, it runs. There's a wreath on the front, and there is this is like a heavy duty pipe cleaner, which my wife got with holiday theme colors. And again, this was used on eBay, and it was $250 for this used locomotive, and required a lot of work to get it up to my standards. There's LEDs in here instead of incandescent lamps. Just a whole lot of rebuilding and cleaning up the wires and stuff, because whoever put the QSI in and stuff, that just a crappy job of installation. Okay, next unit. The door on the other side is open because it would be facing out from the Christmas tree. There's an elf standing in the door. There's a set of O-scale elves from the what was the train with Tom Hanks and the animated film Polar Express elf? But this is a Mike's Train House car. Again, Atlas trucks, and keeping Talgo couplers on it because, again, 24-inch radius. The couplers on the locomotive this is a 2-rail model, and so the couplers are body mounted, but with the Talgo here, it's happily running on the 24-inch. I reinforced it with a brass tubing beam down the middle and a bunch of lead to bring it up to NMRA standards. No deco done on this. Now here is a prototype I'm sure you've all seen while you've been rail fanning. Not a word out of any of you. This is a Rail King, which I think also is a Mike Train House thing. Again, Atlas couplers, Talgo arrangement with Atlas trucks couplers. There's a bunch of weight, cut pieces of lead stuffed in there underneath to get it up to standards. The power supply for the LEDs was actually under the sleigh. It got relocated underneath, and after a lot of head scratching, I figured out that it would work with DCC as the supply for the unit. And it even has, believe it or not, if you look at the nose of the lead reindeer, can you see the red light? That delighted my wife. So this was another successful addition to the fleet. Lionel has a toy dump car that you can get, and you know how Lionel will have a magnet under the track to activate actions of some of their cars? And so this thing, if it was running in a Lionel system, you could actually have the load of loose boxes, which were supplied with the model. You can actually dump them into a bin on the side of the track. That doesn't work, and all these things are glued in here. More O-scale elves from the Polar Express promotional stuff. Again, Atlas trucks and Talgo mount.
That's a dangerous model, David, because if that dumped in front of the right wife, she might think it's all jewelry boxes.
Sorry, I've been really sick the last couple of weeks. Then this came in very bad shape along with the Plymouth. And once again, torn to pieces and rebuilt from the ground up. These were plastic. These handrails on the top where you come up the ladders on the end of the car, that was replaced with formed brass pieces. Just lots of stuff having to be glued and repaired. And then I went to Christmasify it, as you can see here. it actually is temporarily on here. I have some pins stuck in tiny holes in the frame, and these are just tied on with some wire so I can de-Christmas it. But again, Atlas trucks, in this case, caboose trucks with power pickup, and the body mounted couplers. But again, since it's working against a Talgo, it's been successful. Another wreath. I found out what a lot of people find out, which is especially yellow or other light color cars that are molded in that plastic, any light on the inside lights up the walls of the car. The white comes right through. So it has 3 coats of paint, black and then green to simulate that sort of green you see in some cabooses. LED lighting in there. There's a red light on the back of the cab. So this was a thing that altogether, my wife is delighted. I consider it a very successful project. As it sits here, it's drawn at about 120 milliamps with the locomotive not working. But then the other part of the project was, as you can see here, that's a 24-inch radius circle, 2 pieces with removable pin hinges to hold it together and in alignment. So this is what's going under our tree. That slot is because there's a bookcase the train runs under, and that slot clears a leg on the bookcase. So I consider this to be a successful project, but it's certainly nothing I would do again. It was quite a lot of work, but learning at the same time. So that has been my
Dave,
project. Yes, comments, jokes?
back in the 1980s, I did the same thing, only I didn't spend that much money because first I started out with an HO. I think it was Bauchman stuff that was an old timer train with little MDC shorty cars running around. I think many of us have done this on the Christmas tree. And that really didn't satisfy everybody, and they fell off the track too easily. So we wound up finding something that was about 1/30th scale European semi-toy set that just worked marvelously. And it had Christmas decorations already on it.
So just 2 comments, David. One, I couldn't help but notice on the caboose, it had a thing about being courteous, and that I thought that was, whether it was deliberate or inadvertent, choosing a caboose that had that message on the side was very interesting. If you notice when you read it, I don't know what it says. It says being courteous. So thought that was almost a Christmassy message on the caboose. And then, of course, the other thing is I'm sure David will bring that on the 9th and 10th to Pleasanton and run it on the Pleasanton layout. So it'll be good. We'll have a Christmas train to run on the Pleasanton layout, which I don't think we've ever done before.
I'm just afraid they're going to run me out of the club when I bring that thing in, Phil.
Nah, not the O-Skillers. The O-Skillers are.
Well, Phil, you've got a prototype just down the road in Niles Canyon.
That's true. They run it there. So cool. That's very cool.
I am looking forward to taking it to Pleasanton during Good Guys and run it around a bit. Partly because I just want to get some miles on the equipment to see that it doesn't, some problems or teething problems come up. Put a half an hour run on it or something. Next.
So I actually had 2 things that I wanted to talk to. One, which is actually almost an extension of what we were just talking about there, which is the Pleasanton Club. We at the Pleasanton Club, we're actually going to be open, or they will be open. I'm actually going to be in Dallas and Denver next week for the Good Guys. And one of our Bruce, who many of you know from the G scale side, actually built a Good Guys display. We actually built an area in the layout. This is where you see the green is actually a drop-in place to drop in different kinds of models. So we've got a model of the Pirates of the, I can't remember the name of it now, but it's the Halloween display they do. We did one for the Good Guys. We're going to do one for the county with a county fair. So what was interesting about this was I actually took this picture and put it on the Good Guys Facebook page, and they responded that they love having the model railroad layout in the open for the fair, or for the Good Guys, which is a bit about how we're helping to market the value of the model railroad to the fair and the fair community. The other thing it did that was really interesting was last Saturday, 4 of us, all from the O Club in Pleasanton, went up to Yuba City to see Mike Andrews' O scale layout. So Mike built in 2011, built a 35 by 55 foot building behind his house. And he built a really amazing O scale layout there. The Vargas brothers have actually helped him build it. And it's a WPSP transition era layout. You guys see that from the engines. Within the back here, this is WP, this is the Ketty Y back here. But it's got 2 peninsulas in the middle. One peninsula that you see here this is Marysville, which is across the way from Yuba City, and this island is Yuba City, and all the buildings and structures there are built based on buildings and structures that were actually in the area back in the 50s. Just a lot of detail, and if you get a chance to go up there, it's really pretty amazing. I got one picture here, if I can get to it, of too many pictures. So he's got a full model of, it's not quite the width of the actual Sacramento shops, but has the front shop, a working turntable, and then about, I don't know, it's probably 30 stall roundhouse behind that. And this is the back shops here and the roundhouse off to the right there.
Yeah.
So if you get a chance to go, I mean, one of those things, and if there's some interest, we could probably, could think about actually having a road trip. I was thinking this might be an interesting thing to actually organize, is a road trip to a couple of layouts up in areas like that are a drive. So we drove from Pleasanton, left San Ramon. It's about 2 hours up. We stopped on the way up in Dixon, found a little restaurant in downtown Dixon that was absolutely wonderful for breakfast. So we drove there about an hour, stopped, had some breakfast, drove another hour, got there about noon, toured the layout. Then there's a railroad shop in Yuba City. North of that, there's a warehouse shop. I can't remember the name of it now, but it's a guy who's got a big warehouse, buys a lot of collections, but he was closed because he had knee replacement. And then we came back and drove through Roseville to see Roseville Hobbies, and did a little bit of driving around the Roseville yards. So it was a really cool day trip. Pretty much takes the whole day, but very much worth it. So if you get a chance to do that and go up there, and if there's interest, could think about actually maybe finding a couple of layouts up in an area like that and doing a trip, and then trying to coordinate. People have to coordinate together to do rides. Unfortunately, I don't think we can actually coordinate rides. There's been an edict around that because of the legal ramifications. So, but if there's interest, I thought it was a pretty amazing layout. One of the best O-scale layouts I've seen.
Apart from the NMRA, because of the legal restrictions, I'd be interested in that trip if someone does put it together.
Well, what I think we could do is we could, what I think we can do is announce it, put it together, and put it up on groups.io, and then let people talk to each other about arranging rides on groups.io separately. It's just apparently
fully understand the legal.
And our legals, apparently someone who coordinated a carpool, there was an accident, and the person who coordinated the carpooling ended up getting sued because they facilitated what caused the accident, or it facilitated them being in the car when the accident happened. So I'm beyond myself with that stuff. But anyway, anything else? Anybody else have anything interesting? Or you want to talk? Oh, go ahead, Jim.
Yeah, I built a little work table that basically elevates, has an elevated work surface, so that when I work on a standard table, I don't have to hunch over really deep, and it helps my neck and back a lot.
Cool.
I'm just gonna- If I can get a good image of it here.
Oh, that's so basically just it's a basically a work desk you can move around that's got raises everything up. Plus, it looks like it's got a vise on it.
Yep. Well, and plus you can take the vise on and off, and plus it's got space for, storing stuff.
Cool. That's a good idea.
So yeah,
Um,
simple but versatile.
I actually stopped by Jay Sheelan's and he's got a 3D printer and he put it on a workbench in his garage, a filament printer. And he said he was always bending down trying to look at it. And he took an old, like crate, one of those plastic crates, and put it on top of that and then cut one side out so he could store stuff underneath. Same kind of idea. That's a great idea. I never thought about just doing it on a regular workbench.
Yeah, because part of the problem is I was working on paper stuff and I was keep going like this. And
Yep.
after a while, my neck and back hurts nowadays when I do that. So getting into a more upright position helps me personally a lot. So maybe it'll help others out there too.
Good idea.
I'm with you on that. I have a cardboard box I set on my work table to pick the stuff up, so I'm not having to lean over so much. Does anybody see what's connected to my railroad amp meter? See this object here? Can anybody guess why I put a bunch of silicone, high temperature silicone rubber on the light bulb?
Oh, because you found
Because
it
when I
painful to
dropped
touch
it, of course, the glass shattered. So this is a idiot-proof dummy load. And the idea here is at some point I'll be taking this with me, the O-scale layout of Pleasanton, and then putting it across the rail section by section, foot by foot, looking for spots that have voltage drop when under a load. But yeah.
Actually, David, when you come, you'll be actually more surprised. So this could apply in HO as well, but it's a different set of math. One of the things we've noticed at the Pleasanton Club is there are places where engines seem to slow down. And gut feel is that what we've got are bad solder joints and we're getting resistance in the solder joint. So what happens is when the engine comes in there, the engine is pulling load. If you've got a bad solder joint, you now have a resistance bridge between the locomotive resistance and the resistance of the solder joint, and that drops the voltage that the engine is seeing. So I actually went on Amazon. I was thinking it was Amazon, but it may have been eBay. I think it was Amazon, and I bought a 5 100 or no, 5 ohm 100 watt resistor. And so if you go through the math with 15 amps, with 15 volts, if you want to generate 3 amps, which is kind of what a lash up of O-scale engines pulls, they pull 3 amps. You actually have to have a 5 ohm resistor. And so what you can do is put that resistor across the track, use the ramp meter, and see when you put the resistor on how much the voltage drops. And that tells you that block of track has some sort of solder issue.
Yep.
By the way, if you connect that resistor up the track and you keep it connected for 30 seconds, it'll burn your hand. It gets really hot. So and you can actually see we've got some amp meters. You can literally put it on the track and watch the amperage go up by about 3 amps when you connect it. So yeah, it's a good tool set to use a load resistor to check things, because you can find some, if you just check the tracks with a ramp meter, the ramp meter has incredibly low impedance. It's very high impedance, or excuse me, incredibly high impedance. So therefore it has low current and it won't draw much current at all. It's milliamps of current. So in order to get a real reading, you actually have to put some load on, which is what David's done with a light bulb and what we're doing with the resistor.
I went with the light bulb, Phil, just because you get the light lighting up, so you can
yep.
just catch that part of it. But yeah, the resistor, if you want to pull serious power, then you have to do
To
something
pull
like
the
that.
load. Yep. Cool. Any other exciting modeling? Welcome, Jonathan.
I finally put a decoder inside of a Walther's RDC1, and I bought a decoder with the 8-pin, standard 8-pin plug, and plugged it into the 8-pin socket on the circuit board in the top of the RDC, and it just shorted out. I fooled with it for a few minutes, then I tore it all apart and put in my standard NCE D13J decoder and just threw the circuit board away and added lighting. So I have an RDC that's ready to run on the HO layout at Pleasanton. However, I still have to paint. I got to paint all these guys. So I've just glued them on a stick for painting purposes. I ain't going to get fancy about it, but you know, throw some blue and brown and black and such on them and paint some hats, and then I can put some people inside the RDC.
If anyone is interested in being, I don't know what the right word is, seeing or being shamed by incredible figure painting. We did the modeling lifestyle with a guy named Ben Poole on Thursday. This is the new tracks it's called the modeling. Go on YouTube, you'll find the modeling lifestyle. And Ben had some friends on, Al Judy on, and a guy named Ian Fanges, who's from Australia, and he paints figures. And basically, Ben, most of his modeling is taking figures and buildings and building scenes. And the level of detail you get on the figures is pretty amazing.
What scale is he working in?
This is all primarily it's a bunch of ON30 guys. It's the kind of the original ON30 outlaw kind of folks, and feeling themselves as the outcasts of model railroading. Very interesting. But yeah, Ian does an amazing job. So he actually, you can actually get figures. There's a company in the UK called Model U, and there's a company in Austria, and you can get figures from them and then send them to Ian, and he'll paint them for you and send them back to you. The thing that's amazing is he paints checkerboard shirts on people in O scale. And when you look at it, I don't know. Let me see if I got a couple of pictures. You guys talk for a moment. I'll show you a couple of pictures of it. It's pretty interesting.
While Phil's digging that up, I will remark it was very educational to me to do this work in O scale, because I've been in HO for 50 years, and it's interesting in the sense of the same solutions and techniques apply. It's just a little easier to do a few things because stuff's just bigger, and that's nice. But what's frightening is the amount of weight one has to put inside some of these Lionel cars to get them up to NMRA standards. It's just big slugs of lead.
Yeah, it is. They are pretty heavy. They used to jokingly call O scale the blacksmith scale. So,
but it does beg the question of, does the NMRA have standards for the F or G scale, the what we call garden railway stuff, for how much you're supposed to rate that equipment? I'm picturing 10-pound cars.
I think they do, actually. Okay. So these, I'll show these few of these. These were pretty. I got to go back and do my share my screen here. So these are O scale images.
Oh
Okay.
my. That's beautiful work.
And some of these are actually folks that were actually 3D prints. There were scans of people. But the idea is kind of creating scenes where you kind of look at them and they're kind of believable. And you kind of see some of the same folks in different scenes here. The one in the center, there's a popular figure explaining his position on the issue.
Oh my.
Kind of the lunch break anyway. But yeah, it's pretty amazing what people do. And that's one of those times when I have to say, I've kind of always gone through life figuring you can almost do anything if you put your mind to it. And then there's the realization that you will never do that. No matter how hard you try, I'll never be able to paint like that. So
I kind of disagree with that, but
you could actually learn if you're really focused on it.
I don't think it would take that long if you focused on it.
That's the thing, is what does one choose to focus
Exactly.
on?
That's
Yeah.
probably true. That's probably true.
Because I have done that kind of crazy painting because I used to do a lot of gaming. I still have a lot of my gaming figures, and I do have like characters with.
Well,
like,
Jim, you should do a clinic on that.
I have done a clinic on
You
that.
have that. We should have you make sure you do one at the convention next year. The
Maybe.
clinic proposal forms are up there too. I'd love to. I think, what are the 10 things you need to think through to become a great figure painter? What do you have to do that? Because the problem is I don't even know how to start. I just kind of look at it and it's kind of like,
Well, nowadays at least you could get great figures, which is a good start.
That's
Well,
true.
yeah, you start with Gina Lola Brigida and then Sophia Loren.
Well,
Actually,
one of
that's
the
kind of mean by great figures is if you look at some of the older O scale figures, especially,
Yep.
they're so badly proportioned and ugly. It's just like, ooh.
Well, one of the things I was trying to figure out if we could do for our convention next year is set up someone to do a scanning booth where you can scan people, because once you get people scanned into STLs, then you can do some interesting things. I was also talking to somebody who said that they talked to the Model U guys, and the Model U guys said they're in the process of being willing to sell STLs. So, it's an interesting thought that all these guys that are doing 3D printing, if you can buy the STL from them, then you can print it yourself. And a lot of these could be printed, with anybody with a fairly good 3D printer. And, the 3D printers, especially the resin printers, the interesting thing is, filament printers are basically toothpaste tubes with a control system. So you really your speed of printing is how fast you can squeeze the tube. The beauty of resin printing is that it's based on pixels on a light screen. So therefore, as you put more pixels in, you get more resolution. But more importantly, as you can put more pixels into a bigger screen, and you get actually a lot more production capability. So I don't know. I think last one time we were together, Earl showed what Sierra West is doing with their 3D printed details and stuff, which is pretty amazing. So.
Yeah, I wish I had a garage so I could do something like a resin printer, but yeah, the resin printing stuff is just totally amazing because I do watch some of that, and the gamers especially are going crazy with that kind of thing.
Yep. Yeah, there's some amazing stuff in the gamers community and in the military modelers.
Yeah.
Both of those are pretty amazing, and a lot of skills that are very transferable to model railroading.
Two things, Phil. Are there intellectual property questions about STL files?
Potentially.
Well, so so you can make the argument that an STL file is a piece of intellectual capital. I think you can make the argument that it could be copyrighted as an output of intellectual capital.
Hmm.
The problem with STL files is the same problem you have with music files, which is once I sell you the file, how do I manage use and redistribution? So, in other words, if you buy there's a place called HD Tracks that sells high definition audio. So you can go up there and you can buy, the 192 kilohertz sampled rate, which is the master sample rate of an album. And I think about $25 you can buy it. And what you get is you get a bunch of files, and each file is one of the songs on the album. And the files are the original master recordings, but they're not copyright protected. They're copyright protected legally. In other words, you have a legal barrier to redistribution of that. You bought it for personal use. Therefore, legally, you are constrained to personal use. But there's no technology barrier to redistribution. So in other words, if I buy it, I can give them to you. By giving them to you, I've committed a crime, or committed, not just, I don't know if it's purely a crime, but it's definitely something that can generate legal action. But there's no physical technological barrier to doing that. And the same thing's true with an STL. I mean, this is a, I can't see it, but this is a 24-foot freight car frame that one of the ON30 guys was doing, and he was printing them at Shapeways, and he sent me the STL file and I printed it. So, from an intellectual perspective, I mean, this has my intellectual value and input to this was pushing a button. All the intellectual value of creating it really belongs to someone else, but once that .stl file is released, it's kind of generally available. If you go read, for example, on Thingiverse, Thingiverse has a thing that says the standard use rights on Thingiverse said that if you download this, you can use it for personal use, but you can't use it for commercial. There's generally on those things, there's a constraint for commercial use. You're allowed unlimited personal use, but no commercial use. I don't know what the constraints. I mean, I'm assuming the constraints if you buy an STL to print, I'm assuming there would be the same kind of commercial constraints like there is on music files and that kind of thing. But it's an interesting thought process that, why do you, if you have a 3D printer, why do you buy something that's 3D printed? Why don't you just buy the object, a file, and print it yourself? So we'll see where it goes. It's all very interesting.
Thank you, Phil. I have a question though, Jim. I would really like to invite you to think about, it sounds like you've done it before, but to do a figure painting clinic at the convention. That would be a nice addition to the things for people to learn a bit more about.
Where's the convention this year?
Montecito.
It's basically at the intersection of 680 or 880 and 237 in Milpitas at the Sonesta San Jose. I hate to say Milpitas, but Milpitas is a great place to visit. It's not a great place to live. Apologize to anybody who lives in Milpitas. If you drive down 880 and you turn on
I used to work there.
Yeah, or if you drive, it's that big hotel. If you just remember back to when you turned onto 237 and went over that flyover there, remember seeing that hotel off to the left that's about a 10-story hotel? That's the hotel. It used to be a Crown Plaza. It was one of the hotels. Yeah. But it's a very nice hotel. It's a great place. And what's really cool is we got a $139 room rate. So, if you live in the Bay Area and you don't want to drive every day, you can get up Thursday morning, drive down Thursday morning, stay in the hotel Thursday night and Friday nights, $250, going to be probably a little $300 to stay 2 nights. There's no parking fees. There's lots of parking, and there's no parking fees. There's no resort fees. And anybody who likes Asian food, I mean, you work down there, Jim, so you know this, that shopping center that's right next to the freeway there, it's just to the east of the hotel, has one of the most amazing arrays of really good Asian restaurants, because it's basically the place where a lot of the tech workers go for lunch. So they're going to go to places that are good. Yeah, there's a dim sum restaurant in there that is as good as I've had outside of Hong Kong.
Bill, that fact that it's going to be just $139, well, probably plus tax and so forth.
Yeah, yeah.
But the fact that there's no parking fees is probably the best selling point you've got
Yep.
for people staying at the hotel.
Yep. No, exactly. And like I said, for a lot of folks, within a couple hours driving distance, you just come in on Thursday morning. You don't really need to come Wednesday night if you don't want to. And the only reason to stay Saturday night is to stay for the banquet and the Sunday morning breakfast. So, to be perfectly honest. So, for a lot of folks in the Bay Area, you can buy just the non-meal fare, which is on the website, and then come on Thursday morning and leave on Saturday evening. And the cost other than the fare to get to the convention is very minimal. And the hotel itself is nice. We like the hotel a lot. It was to my mind as nice a hotel as the like brands like Sheraton and that, as far as a hotel facility.
Phil, let me steal the talking stick back. So seriously, Jim, did you get the email from Phil that had the invitation to put in for volunteering a clinic?
Yes, I did.
Good. Yeah, please feel free, says the clinic chair.
But by the way, I'll put the link to the convention website in the chat. So if anybody's interested, it's there's
I do have one question. Can I do a clinic and not attend the convention?
yeah, we'd like you to attend, but yeah, I guess we just submit it and let's talk about it. Let's do it that way.
Okay.
Yeah.
I wanted to check with Chuck. Chuck, how are you doing today?
Well, I'm fine. I'm in Arizona awaiting taking title to our new home, 4-bedroom, 3.5 bath, single story in the Pebble Creek Senior Resort community of Goodyear, Arizona. One of my neighbors will be Mr. DCC, Bruce Petrarca. Haven't met him yet.
All right.
I was going to ask a question also about the Bay Area because, as you may know, Hurricane Hillary is coming up from Baja.
Yes.
And I, in fact, was scheduled to be in San Diego today and tomorrow to run on the La Mesa layouts, the track warrant control session. But I decided to comply with Rule 108 and canceled after I read that there was going to be 5 to 8 inches of rain with winds gusting to 60 miles an hour and flash flood warnings everywhere from Southwest Arizona to San Diego. And I guess it's not going to come to the Bay Area, but the news said that people in San Diego are actually sandbagging their houses. And because the Mesa layout is on half it's on the ground floor, that back door, I wonder whether they're going to be having to put sandbags out to prevent water from coming in and flooding the ground floor of the layout.
The latest
Your mission,
this
Chuck,
morning
is
is
to
it's
stay
going to
safe.
miss us completely.
The Bay Area. It's going to miss the Bay Area completely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's turned. I saw the track had turned inland, and it looked like by the time it got here up by us this height, it was going to be late Sunday, Monday, and it was way over in Nevada by that point, or over almost Nevada, Utah.
It's been an experience here, and we're staying currently at my brother's third home condo in Surprise, Arizona. He and his wife are snowbirds. Said we could stay at their place until our house was finished, just pay the electric bill. And it's been over 100 degrees every day for the last 6 weeks. We might actually get below 100 this weekend for a couple of days because there's a lot of clouds and some threatening of rain. But we really haven't had any rain, and we've been here since the first week of May. So it's a good way to get experience with what life is going to be like in Arizona for us in the future. But I will be building a layout at some point. I have a 200 square foot den converted into a bedroom, and the wife says I can use that as my train room. So I'll be building Baltimore and Ohio, HO, DCC, mid 1950s, something quasi Eastern Maryland near the Washington, D.C. area. I have all the equipment pretty much I need. Dick Zarin, who I think is a member of PCR, has been helping me design the layout, and I'll be using that Third Planet software, I think, to actually build myself a real layout on which to start building. That'll start sometime probably late autumn, early winter, after we get into the house and get 14 U-Haul boxes emptied, which are currently sitting in storage with all of our belongings from Belmont.
Yeah.
Yeah, the thing that was amazing to me was they said there were 15 days, I think it was, in a row in Phoenix where it never got below 90 degrees at night.
Oh, no, yeah.
And
I think we've only had 3 days since the 1st of July that went below 90 at night here in
Yeah.
Surprise. And I think Phoenix, at least the airport, I think was above 110 every day in the month of July.
Yeah.
I mean, even the residents around here tell me this is very unusual. It's never been this hot this long.
Chuck,
And
this is where you're supposed to cheerfully say, but it's a dry heat.
Well, it was until today, and today it's very humid out. I measured the dew point, and it's up around 69 degrees, which is that's Washington D.C. brutal conditions.
Yep.
So I'm pretty much staying indoors, and we have a nice air conditioning in the condo we're staying at, and get to avoid most of that. But I'm also now I'm a regular at Beryl Fosnight's Union Pacific Wyoming Division Railroad in Cornville. I don't know if you've looked into that in the past. But it's in a sort of like a big Quonset hut he built. I think the layout is 2,500 square feet, if I'm not mistaken. And he runs 20 passenger trains as well as a lot of manifest freights and locals and coal drags and so forth. And I'm going to be the assistant superintendent for the passenger train operations. 10 of them are diesel streamliners. He runs all the city streamliners from 1957. And then 10 of those trains are powered by 484s. So it'll be a lot of fun. If you ever get out in Cornville, he does an op session every month, except when it's so hot that even his air conditioning system has trouble. I'll be doing that in the future.
Yeah, it's kind of a common in garden railroading and outdoor live steam. I saw some images from Texas, and they had some workers outside, and they did, the temperature readings, and they were reading 105 degrees body temperature.
Yeah,
which
I think they
is
told
pretty
us that
scary.
on our house that the crews would start working most mornings around 5 a.m. Sunrise was about 5:30, and by 3 p.m. every day they were off the job because it was just too brutal.
Yep, I can understand that.
Whoa. Yeah.
Well, gentlemen, my bronchitis is telling me I need to stop talking here. So a pleasure speaking to you all, and thank you for putting up with my Christmas train. Phil, I do plan to bring it to Good Guys, and we'll have some fun amusing the gang with that.
Dave, that the Christmas train is something so many of us have been through. And it's just something that it just happens. Mm-hmm. Your wife, your kids, they want to. Well, I grew up with a Lionel around the Christmas tree.
Yeah. I remember that too. I don't remember the first ones because I was only 10 weeks old when my brother put his AC Gilbert S-scale train around our Christmas tree in Maryland, and he had the Streamline Pacific from the B&O pulling his train. Apparently, my mother told him to pipe down because it would wake me up. I guess I was asleep on the floor by the Christmas tree.
It's probably why you're interested. You're interested in model railroading because of that. You started at that age. You guys have a great one.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that one also because my blood type is A positive, CMV negative, which only 15% of the U.S. population is CMV negative. But that's the type of blood you have to give to premature infants. So there's a lot of kids out there now who are in their early 30s, because I've been donating for 40 years, and parents wondering, where did that interest in model railroads come from? And there's none of that in our family.
It's not hereditary, it's in the blood. I think that's a good closer. You guys have a great one. We'll see it. Oh, by the way, in a couple of weeks, I will be somewhere in Denver, and I'll have to figure out whether I will be there or not. But we'll have a call, and it may just be an open call for whoever comes in 2 weeks, because I'll be at the Narrow Gauge Convention in Denver. So talk to you guys
All
in a
right.
couple of weeks. Bye.